Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It. This is Taylor, your host, and today's episode is going to be all about fathers, and specifically father and daughter relationships, being a black father, and also being biracial. So today I'm going to have a very, very special person as a guest here with me, and they've been on the podcast before. So if you have listened for a long time, I don't even remember what episode number it is, but it's titled Being Biracial, and y'all probably recognize him from my Instagram. I constantly put his children on my Instagram, so if you've always been wondering who those adorable kids are, this is the man, and going to share with you all a little bit about just kind of the role he's played in my life, and, you know, in lieu of Father's Day approaching us, I'm hoping that this episode will leave you with some kind of insight or different perspective, or perhaps feel relatable and feel helpful and comforting in some way. So today I'm here with Robert Valentine, who I've always considered my chosen father, and I was his practice daughter. So thanks for coming back on the podcast, and happy almost Father's Day.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I know we talked about this in the last episode that you were on, but let's maybe take a trip down memory lane for a sec and talk about who you are, how you became a part of my life, what it means to be a chosen father. So how did you first meet me?
Okay, so I think I met you. My date might be wrong, or your age. I think it was around you were 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And basically, your mom was dating my best friend for a long time. And not a long time, but back in those days, it was considered a long time.
Yeah.
So basically, whenever I would go up, of course, I was third wheel. We lived in D.C., Northern Virginia, and you guys lived in New Jersey. So I would always, in the beginning, I don't know if it was bring me along to kind of like hang out with you, or if, but it was, you know, it was like, hey, let's go up to New Jersey, take the road trip. And vice versa, when you guys would come down, your mom would, of course, you would be with your mom, and we would end up hanging out. So I would say just through the years, kind of being the third wheel, and no one else being around to hang out with, we just basically just started I think the relationship just kind of grew from there.
And you were how old?
At that time, I would want to say about maybe 20. I want to say 21. We were probably around 21. I think I was 21. Yeah. Your mom's like a year older or 2 years older. I can't remember. But I believe because I didn't, but we could buy our alcohol legally. So I want to say 21, 22. But we could do the math.
If I was about 4 or 5, I mean, you know, I can't do math, but I was about 4 or 5, and Mom had me when she was 20.
Right.
So she would have been about 25 then, probably around that time.
Actually, I think she was 24, because actually I think we remember having a conversation.
Okay.
Her being the older lady of the group, because I think she was older than Alex even. Yeah. So just a little bit, because I think Alex is like a year, just almost barely a year older than me, because his birthday is in, he's a Scorpio, so I think it's November. And then, December.
And I remember, like, I mean, I don't remember if it was Alex specifically who my mom was dating at the time, but I've heard stories about a lot of her boyfriends being like, can you, like, get her to shut up? Because I was just always talking.
Yeah. I know one time, it wasn't talking. I know one time you were quiet, and Alex got upset. He was like, just make her be quiet. And I don't know if you were, I mean, I was in the other room. And I think, I mean, you guys were all in the townhouse, and I think, like, I'm pretty sure you were crying, and you were just crying and crying and crying, and he was just like, can you make her be quiet? And Crystal was just, or your mom was just kind of like, you know, and so I remember that.
And so with being the third wheel and always kind of being around and entertaining me, then Alex broke up with my mom, and you made like a pretty, at least from what I've heard of it, a very intentional decision.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think with any breakup, there's multiple opinions how it happened. I didn't know they officially broke up. I basically just got a phone call, and I think your mom was trying to get in touch with Alex, and there were no cell phones back then, so it was a little bit more complicated.
He was ghosting.
Yeah, he was. I don't know if we called it ghosting back then. It was just probably avoiding. But anyway, I found out what happened, and then it was kind of like, oh, like, okay. Once I realized like the relationship was done, it's like, but I still like I have this relationship with you now, that. And so kind of like helping your mom through the breakup.
Well, and I feel like you were also kind of like a bit of a voice of reason. I mean, you're like me, you don't drink alcohol. So even when, you guys would go out and stuff, I feel like she probably leaned on you for, support and advice in terms of dating and life in general, being that you were also like sober and,
Yeah, I think that came a lot later. But I think in the after, like post breakup, like right then and there, it was just kind of like I was probably a voice that wasn't her friends at the time, and I wasn't really like her friend.
Yeah,
and so it was just a voice that kind of just let her know like what happened, and also like that's my best friend, but you can't separate what happened was fucked up and how it like went down was, and I think that maybe at the point kind of shocked her, like wow, like but I've always lived in kind of good and bad and doing the right thing, and when you see someone that needs help, you help. So basically, then we just started talking, and like I knew at some point like she was going to go off and create a another relationship, but I think I can't remember, but I just and it could have been even her like saying basically like after hearing me talk about like well, I want to still be in like Taylor's life, and I'm sure she was like absolutely, and because at that point like in my head, and now knowing the reality, I was like, from going to your grandparents' house to going to your cousin's house, I didn't see any other black people. Yeah. So I was just like I definitely had to stay a part of your life, knowing that information at the time. And your mom was absolutely like, yeah, but I don't think she viewed it from that perspective. It was just more like we formed a connection. So like we could remain friends, me and your mom, and then you could be, friends as well.
I would benefit from the two of you maintaining contact.
Right.
In her head.
Right. But in my head, it was like, it was more about the bond that we created, even though at times, I'm sure at that age it was probably more annoying because I think I was more...
because you'd give me wet willies.
Absolutely.
And I was like, I hate you.
But it wasn't more... I didn't view it as a father-daughter bond. I viewed it more as just like just a bond. Like I didn't title it then. It was just like...
I wasn't practice daughter then.
Right. Yeah. You just have this relationship with this little kid who's biracial, and there's no one in her world that she can look to as like, he kind of looks like me. He doesn't look like me. So yeah, definitely. That was for me, from my side, like, like I was going to have the friendship with your mom. And then absolutely, I wanted to stay involved throughout your life as well.
And at that time when we lived in Jersey, had you ever met anyone from my dad's side of the family?
Never. I've never met your dad. I've seen a picture for the first time, I think maybe 2 years ago. Because your mom had never showed me a picture. And you got to understand at the time, like we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have, you know what I mean? I think we had MySpace, but it was still like that still came later because I think that was
that was when I was in like middle school.
In Puerto Rico even. So I think you showed me a picture of your dad the first time. I think like a couple years ago. Like this is what my dad looks like. And then I think you were on your laptop or something on Facebook, and there was like a sibling, like
one of his sisters.
Yeah, or something. And then you showed me a picture, and I was shocked at how similar you guys look. Even though it makes sense. But, I mean, you favor both of your parents I think, fairly, but it made sense. Like when I saw the picture, I was just like, oh yeah, it looks like you look like your dad. And then that's it. But yeah, never met him. Never. I don't even think I saw a black person in Bridgeton all the times I had gone there, which makes sense because I was in a different environment. Yeah. And I mean, I think we went to, I can never remember the name of the restaurant, but I believe Steph, one of your mom's friends, worked at this restaurant where they threw the shells on the floor. And that just seemed so crazy to me. Like, why? Like, is that even a thing? But we were, but
like a seafood place?
I don't think it was seafood. I think it was more, I don't remember what it was, but what stuck in my mind was
like,
just
where am I?
How like people could eat and just eat these peanuts. And I don't even know where the peanuts were coming from, but there were just so many peanut shells on the floor and people were just throwing them on the floor and it was okay. And everyone in the restaurant was white. Like I was literally the only black person. And I knew that at the time because when you're a black person of color, those things pop out to you first. Like you look around like looking for that person to be like, hey, like you know, you don't necessarily want to go over and talk to them, but it's just like, but yeah. So I would say all of my experiences to Bridgeton, definitely. So that always stuck in the back of my head. Like am I the first person of color that you saw? You know, like I always wondered, like, and we didn't have deep conversations. Of course, it would have been inappropriate, I think, to even me ask your mom, like, if you and if your dad was still involved in your life or whatever. But I knew, I would say throughout our relationship that he wasn't, not because I asked any questions if he was, but just the questions you started to have.
That I started to have?
Yeah.
What question I have?
Well, you would ask questions like, you know, why is my nose big? We were talking about that. Like, why is your nose so big? I mean, and I think one time you had said to me, like, I'm really tan. Like, I can't remember. It was something about going outside, but like I was really tan, and you weren't so tan. But I mean,
kids.
Yeah. But I mean, and my daughter who's tan, who's, you know, mixed race, black and Mexican and all the things I'm mixed with. And Leonore's also, my wife is also mixed. Like, you know, she associates color, you know, even herself now being like, I'm brown. No, she's not brown. She's tan too. And then Calais recognizes me as brown. And I don't know why, you know, Papa's brown.
Well, he's still learning his colors. He's 2 years old.
And it makes sense. Like, and I remember saying, no, Papa's black. And I'm thinking, well, if he's learning colors. And he sees black. That's not going to even. So he's like, Papa brown. So but just having those questions. And then over time, I think had conversations with your mom once we established a friendship where I felt like I felt
that
like
it was more appropriate.
To ask like what's going on. Yeah.
And so when you had met me, I was living in Bridgeton, which is in South Jersey, where I was born, Cumberland County, it's poorest county in Jersey. And my mom made a decision, I want to say shortly after this breakup with Alex, to move me from Bridgeton all the way across the country to Seattle. She didn't want me to have the same childhood that she had growing up. My biological dad had just graduated high school, was trying to make something for himself, but was also like getting into trouble and wasn't really active in my life. Plus, also, I guess it had another kid, which now we know I'm like the oldest of 11 or 12 kids. So she didn't tell anyone where she was going except like her family.
She told me.
Yeah, and you.
Well, I don't think... No, she just called me because I had moved to Puerto Rico before because that was the other thing. And I remember saying like, oh, I won't be able to come back to D.C. because D.C. was just such this... I get it now, like an escape of just that from Bridgeton. It was so different. And I moved to Puerto Rico and I remember her calling me saying like, I'm just moving, you know, to Seattle. And I remember like thinking like, what are you running from? And
I mean, that's a whole other episode.
Yeah. But I mean, at the time, like I remember asking the question and she's just like, I'm not running away. My mom's there.
Well, her mom had grown up here in Washington and moved out here like a month or two after me and mom got out here.
Yeah.
So we had that support, but my mom was still at that point, a single mom. And then out here in Seattle is where she met Jason, who's my stepdad, who's white. And they got married, and he was in the Air Force at the time. And then we had moved to South Carolina and all this. And so I'm curious for you, being in a way, me being your practice daughter, and then seeing, me have those experiences and get a father figure in my life that is a white man, what that experience was
as a white man.
Of a white man.
Okay.
Of a white man. What that experience was like for you, or what thoughts were going through your head in terms of like my own personal development or racial identity, like having, a biological black father who's not present or responsible, and then having a stepdad come into my life who was white.
And I think, after your mom moved here, I think our relationship definitely got stronger. We talked, we kept in contact more. And then, I would always ask, like, what are you doing? I don't remember having a lot of phone calls. Like sometimes you would talk on the phone, sometimes you wouldn't. And then I would come out and visit, from Puerto Rico. So definitely the relationship flourished, and grew.
Yeah.
And then, your mom's met Jason. And I laughed earlier, not because she met Jason, or actually we were talking about moving, because when your mom told me she was moving to South Carolina, one of the first things out of my mouth was like, I'm not going to visit you guys there because, growing up on the East Coast and knowing about South Carolina, where they were moving to, I was just like, nah, I'm not interested in going there, even though I've been there.
Because you're a flight attendant.
Yeah. But I had gone before I even started flying, because we had family down there. So at that point, the reason why I chuckled was just because I remember telling her, I'm definitely not going down there. But I did come out to visit. But to get to your question in particular, when your mom met Jason, and for me, I'm the type of person, when people get in relationships, I don't want to say I'm standoffish, but I'm supportive.
You ask the questions and you're like, we'll see.
Yeah.
You're like, let me see.
Yeah, because I don't want my opinion to weigh in too heavy. And this goes for all my friends. I support my friends. If they're happy, then I'm happy. And I try to hold off on my opinions until they're asked. But when I first met Jason, now, of course, I thought he was a great guy. He was,
he's the first nice guy my mom ever dated.
He was super, great. Nothing bad. Never had any bad, negative feelings, bad, super great. Crystal, if you're happy, I'm happy. But then in my head, it was just how is this guy, as with my own friend who dated Crystal, when we would go out to restaurants, people would assume I was dating your mom, and you were our child. I didn't have I didn't have conversations with my friend, but I could tell about it back then. But I could tell how frustrating over time that could be. So when your mom basically got engaged to Jason, that's when I'm more okay, now I need to start. Asking these questions and trying to find out. And I think I remember asking Jason about it, and his answer was just kind of Taylor's my daughter. I see her like my daughter. And for me, it was the perfect answer, the right answer. But in the back of my head, I'm like, but there's going to be a lot more that comes with that over time. And then you have to balance do I, and it's the same thing when you have kids of color. It's when do I initiate this conversation of race? Is she ready? Is he? So it was kind of
I think that hit him in South Carolina.
Right. Which is too late.
Yeah.
Because going to South Carolina. So for me, telling your mom why you don't want to come. Like, she laughed as well. Mm-hmm. And she got why.
She gets why. Yeah, it's not like it needs to be explained.
Right. So for me, like, having these, I don't know, like, hindsight is 20/20. If I could go back and have the conversation, I would have with him. Mm-hmm. Because I knew, your mom knew. I don't know if they had the conversations or not, but I just feel out of respect at that moment, don't feel it was my, because too, as like your pretend dad or your, that other male figure who's another color, I don't want to like step into their relationship a lot, like with my opinions and with what I think, because I think naturally those struggles need to come up, and they need to first as a couple come together of how they're going to grasp these things. So knowing that your mom knew, if they had discussions about it and still went, that's one thing. I know that situations came up where Crystal had reached out to me, your mom, with like, what do I do in this situation?
Yeah, because people were being racist.
Right. And then, like natural instincts, you want to go to the school, you want to shut it down. And I remember telling her, Crystal, or your mom, like, this is going to be a part of her life. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to be able to go and fix this problem.
Shelter me from this problem.
Yeah. Like, she's going to have to, like fix it herself. Learn how to, like, take that on. Mm-hmm. But I said, you going to complaining to the parents, complaining to the school, it's just going to make it worse. Mm-hmm. But what, from my opinion, what I think you'd need to do is just have the conversation and then try to give her the tools that, like, how, like, are these your friends? Or to question your friends, like, why are you using that word? Why are you? And I don't know if she did or didn't, but I never heard anything afterwards. So it's kind of like the problem, as far as from my standpoint, went away.
Yeah. And I think, like, as I think about situations like that, for kids that are biracial, this is where I'm like, yeah, it is really important to have someone in your life who can relate to those kinds of experiences, because I think my mom was raising me and Jason, my stepdad, yes, as I'm their daughter, but also without that inclusion of I am their Black daughter, to where that is going to be a very real part of my experience that they not only don't really have experience dealing with or can relate to, but that they also were not very well equipped to, like, guide me through in the first place. And then having that lack of support of not having anyone else in my family or in my, even in my parents' friends to be able to get that support from other than you. And, you were in Puerto Rico still at the time. And so, as I even look at, like, pictures and stuff that I have of us from when I was little here, like, a lot of the pictures are from here in Seattle. Like, I don't think there's a single photo of us from when I lived in South Carolina.
No, actually, I think there's one that was on my MySpace when I went. Because Jason wasn't there when we went. There was one that I took when I went. I don't know. I have to see if I can remember my login to MySpace. But I think there's one picture of us in South Carolina. And there's a few from, like, none from Bridgeton, but I think I have some from, like, when you were down in D.C.
Yeah, there's one from D.C. here from 4th of July.
No, that's the wine festival, actually. How appropriate were we? Yeah, that's the wine festival. I don't think that's 4th of July.
No, that's 4th of July. That's what Mom always told me. This photo is from 4th of July in D.C.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's the wine festival. Yeah, this is 100% the wine festival, because I have the other picture of this where you're walking up the hill. I can check it out.
No, I don't think I've seen that one. Yeah. But yeah, needless to say, South Carolina.
The 4th of July sounds more appropriate as a parent, so let's go with 4th of July.
Yeah. I'm like trying to actually see, actually if it was 4th of July, I probably would have been wearing something festive. And no one's wearing anything festive.
Well, you picked your outfit, so I'm sure back at that time, you were probably being festive. I would have never dressed up for the 4th of July. So,
yeah.
So going by just that picture, it's hard to say. I'm putting my money on the wine festival.
All right. We'll have to ask Mom as well.
But I did want to stress on your point about like when you're raising a biracial child, and I have friends who have adopted black children, and to me, I think it is super important to reach out to other people of color when you're raising children of color, be it Hispanic or whatever, for two reasons. One, to have that support, but especially dealing in the climate today that we're in right now. As a parent now, I'm observing these conversations that a lot of my friends are having with their children now, and a lot of my friends back in DC that don't really have a lot of black friends, so they're now reaching out to me. And one thing hit me the other day is we tell our children one thing, but we don't follow up with showing it or acting it out. So we say everyone is equal. Everybody is, everyone is...
You can be anything you want to be.
Yeah. Or black people are no different. We need to respect black people. We need to, or Hispanic or Asian or whatever. But if your circle
reflects
just only white, kids pick up on that.
Yeah.
They pick up on that more than I think parents realize. So if you're gonna tell your child that, race isn't an issue, and you don't have any friends of color, you're sending a missed message, and they pick up on it. They pick up on it more than you think you do, because if race isn't an issue, why aren't any people of color ever coming to our barbecues? Why doesn't the family down the street doesn't come to our barbecues, but our other neighbor comes to the barbecues? And they're not going to ask those questions. So for me, you have to model what you preach, because if what you're preaching isn't modeled, then you're preaching gibberish, and they're gonna take it as that. So you're saying one thing but doing the other thing. So you need a village, and I think, and to this day, I think it takes a village to raise a kid, and the more people that your children are exposed to, and we can get into it a little bit later, because I think it was one of the questions that. Or one of the conversations that we have talked about before, but you really need to make sure that your village represents your core beliefs. So in order for the message to be well received. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I identify you as a chosen father, as chosen family, and we've joked throughout the years of me being practice daughter, and I'm wondering at what point for you did you feel in a way, and maybe still not even, and maybe never, but I guess maybe it's just, have you ever? There's so many ways this question could go here, but I've seen you in my life as someone who has in a way been responsible for me, who has provided guidance for me, who has looked out for me and really been there for me. And I guess at what point did it feel for you that oh, she is kind of literally my practice daughter, before you had Naya or Calais, of what role I then was playing in your life, to where you were almost in a father figure role before being a father?
For me, I would say, when I explain to people who you are, I always say like a goddaughter, in a sense, because we never went to church. There was no christening. There was no baptism. There was, your mom's never even said, "Do you want to be?" You know what I mean? So I just decided myself, the closest relationship. At that, this is as we're coming up. So I'm it's kind of like a goddaughter. You check in, you see how they're doing, you have a relationship. And then as we, I would say when we moved to Seattle, you guys were in
Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. And I would say once you got kind of in high school where we could kind of like interact online and where it wasn't like I had to go like kind of like I was calling your mom and then I would talk to you, I think I would be like, oh, this is almost like a practice daughter. And I never said that in my head, but I think the reason why, because for me, when you have a practice daughter, there's the emotional side of being a parent, there's the supportive side of being a parent, and then there's like the financial aspect of being a parent. So there's these different like branches of it. So I would never want to take on the role like just saying like, you know, like she's like my daughter type of thing. And especially without having the conversation with how you feel. But once you started to say, like, I'm like his practice daughter, it made sense. I was like, yes. But with that, sometimes, like, I felt bad saying even practice daughter because of the role of, you know, Jason. Like, Jason has played an important role. And maybe it wasn't the emotional.
Yeah.
It was definitely the more supportive, which is a big deal. And as I'm a parent now, like, I recognize, like, at different stages of life, those like kids start to see those things. Like Naya she doesn't know like 5 cents from $500.
She learning today though.
Yeah. So like as she's learning, you know, like it's you know the value of money. But to her, if it came down like, hey Naya, I'll give you $1,000, or do you want to go to the park with me? She's going to say, I want to go to the park, you know. Now, when she gets about 16, she'd be like, no, give me the money. I don't want to spend any time with you. And I know that day will come. So I always felt bad taking on the like a dad, because, you know, there's those other pieces. But this is once again where that village for me is so important, even with my children, because there's going to be a day where my kids don't want to come to me. They don't want to have those conversations. They don't want to, you know, like bond on issues. And so having that village, that's why it's important, because I know like she can go to you like now, like she has secrets, you know, like she'll tell me like, I told Taylor a secret. And I know that, you know, like I can trust because I know you and that village and those other people, like her secret is safe. I don't even want to know the secret. If it was a secret of importance, like I know you would tell me, but I don't want to know the secrets, but I want to have the confidence in my village that when she's in a situation where she doesn't feel comfortable coming to me, she still has that village. Yeah.
And I think that's in a way kind of like a selfless way of parenting, because it's not this like, I am your everything.
Yeah. No, like, I don't want to be your everything.
And I think, as you said, there is a little bit of that balance of like, you definitely didn't ever step into that responsibility, like financially wise, in terms of being, quote, like a dad in my life. And that was definitely more of an area where like Jason, as my stepdad, was like hardcore provider. And I mean, I remember even in high school, like, when you were in Seattle and I was in Baltimore, and starting to date guys in high school. And like, it was never, for me, it's never been a like, you know, the movie, like, oh, like I'm going to bring you home to meet my parents. I'm like really nervous. And like, you know, you got to make sure that like you impress my dad, or like my dad's going to be really protective. Like dad isn't even ever a word I even really say. But like with Jason and my mom, it was never this like, you know, we had more of like a friendship bond where it was like, yeah, like come hang out with like me and my parents. And like, when you came, I mean, specifically, it was, like it was a big deal if a guy was meeting you, that it was like, you better come correct. Like you don't even know what's about to hit you. Like and at the time is really annoying and like really embarrassing because you really, really would embarrass my boyfriend. And I'd be like, stop, I hate you. But in hindsight, I'm like, no, like he really cared and was like really making sure that the guys that I was dating like were not fucking with me. That they were.
Well, and you know, like even when I think of, you know, I have these conversations a lot about Naya when she starts dating.
And you're gonna get your karma. It's coming.
And for me, it's like it's not about embarrassing them. For me, it's like, and a lot of times your boyfriends were white.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like if you can't handle me, like I'm not physically gonna harm you. I'm not physically going to do anything. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you questions that you can't even prepare for. But because for me, what I want to see is if you're going to be walking around with my biracial as a white guy, I want to know if you can stand up to the world.
Yeah.
Because the world is going to, like, you're going to get stares from black men. You're going to get stares from white men. You're going to get stares from everybody. So if you can't sit comfortable in the conversation with me, that's more telling to me than anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's not a test because I want you to date the worst guys. I want you to date the best guys. But within them, I want you to know the value that you bring to the relationship. And I want you to always know, like, if someone does not meet your standard, they, like, you deserve better to step away. And you know, and that's why, like, I didn't care more about, like, how you felt at the time about the guys because I knew, like, this one's going to be your man forever.
You're always like right off the bat, though. You're like, he's not the one. Yeah, I'm like, how do we know yet?
And I can tell within like how the conversation goes, how they answer the questions. Because to me, if you're just dating a girl because she's pretty or she makes you feel proud walking around with her or these things, like, I know the relationship because it's not about you. And, like, one of my questions will always and has always been, you know, have you dated a girl of color before? Yeah. And I mean, even if it's a black guy, that's going to be a question because it comes with, you know, like, I would love to wish we lived like all women are the same type of thing, but it isn't because when you're dating a woman of color, you're going to get it from all sides. So I want to know if that hasn't crossed your mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always brought it up as a conversation, but then, they, you know.
Right. So they've had now 2 chances to form some. And if you haven't confronted a response yet, then that's a concern for me. But am I going to say, Taylor, break up with the guy? Am I going to say, Taylor, you shouldn't date that guy? I'm going to say, Taylor, I don't think he's the one. Yeah. But I feel it is important that you continue to date that guy because there's a lesson in that relationship, hopefully, that you will absorb that will empower you for the next relationship and the next relationship and the next relationship.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like you probably already know this, but, like, you've been hella instrumental in me having those conversations and in me, like, coming to terms with some of those things and, like, thinking about, okay, well, how do I deserve to be treated in a relationship? How can I stick up for myself in these situations? How can I, you know, curate and develop a relationship where I really am seen and where I am treated with respect and with value, and that this person can step outside of themselves a bit and also see the bigger picture as to how not only I'm perceived in the world, but as to how they will be perceived through me also together in this world. And those are conversations and lessons that growing up, you know, with my both white parents, I never had. That's never been brought up as a concern. And so, you know, like, you're emphasizing on this village piece here, I think this is where, like, you've brought a major strength to my life, where, you know, now sometimes it is really emotional for me, like, being with Naya, because I see where she's growing up with all of this now. And, like, sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, like, how different could my life have been, or how different could, you know, my relationships in my life have been if I had felt this way growing up, if I had been exposed to this stuff when I was younger.
And I think, like, if I could go back in time, I would have definitely initiated a lot of these conversations earlier. But I was coming from a younger mindset as well. But I'm allowing space for even Naya to experience those same things because society is a bigger, you know, and her friends and influencers, and not influencers as far as Instagram, but, like, her friends and just society in general will, you know, mold her in a way that she's going to question a lot of things still as well. Yeah. But that's once again where I want to create a village, like how I see my village is like Thanksgiving at my house. Like there's lots of languages, there's lots of people. And it's also like when I say to Naya that, people, we are all, like you should have friends of different colors. We should blah, blah. I want her to even just not colors, language. Like I want her to see me having a hard time communicating with someone who speaks Arabic. I want her to look at me like trying to communicate with these people, or not those people, but just I want her to focus on or look at I'm trying to connect with these people. We don't speak the language, but they're of value. They're important. They're in our house. They're eating with us, and I think that we could look back on life and just say if I would have had these same things, how would life be different? How would life, but I know I can't necessarily do that, but I think it's when that thought comes up, it's almost like I recognize that it is my inner child that's like feeling hurt by that and was maybe desiring it without knowing it. Oh, absolutely. And where then it's like, not okay. Maybe. Not maybe. Then it was. Where it is, it's difficult to sit in for a moment, but then I also like shift out of that and where I'm like, I'm so happy that I do get to see her grow up with this piece in her life and to maybe not struggle as difficultly, if that's a word, as I did. And I'm wondering, as we talk about like fathers and being a father, like how your relationship with your father, if at all, impacted like how you've shown up in my life and then also now in your life with Naya and Calais as your kids. Yeah. So before having kids, I had a vision of what a father would look like. And this is at a young age. And there's different stages where this will, I think for most men, like there's a stage like, I'm never going to be like my dad. And then there's a stage of, like you bonding with another male role model and like, oh, I want to be like him. And then you have kids and it all gets thrown out the window because it's like, oh, like, like I don't want to enter this relationship with how I want this person to be for me versus letting this person be and molding myself around who this individual is type of thing. And what I'm trying to say better is that I think that I've had a lot of so let me back it up a little bit. So as a young kid, like my dad worked at night. So like when I saw my dad, like a lot of times, like when I'm awake, he was kind of sleeping. And my younger memories of my dad is just, he was at my like football games when I played for like the community football. But he was either working or doing something.
Do you feel like he went against some of those some of those stereotypes like of what a black dad is?
Yeah. And see, and the stereotype has been, like fathers aren't in the home. Now my parents are now divorced, but I want to say my foundation is my dad was home, but I would say he wasn't at a younger age as present, because he was my dad is kind of like there's always something to do. There's always something that needs to be done. Yeah. So, and when you're with a kid, like you can't tell a clean floor from a dirty floor. Like you don't care. Yeah. So a lot of times, like as a young kid, I would yearn for like, I would see my other friends, doing things with their dad. And my dad's definitely an introvert. Like he doesn't really like to travel. As far as like the neighbors coming over and having dinner, he's not interested in it, but he'll go cut the neighbor's yard. Like he'll wash their car if he's washing their car, but he doesn't even want them to come over and say like, thank you. He's just kind of like, you stay in your house, I'll stay in my house. We'll greet each other. We'll be nice. If you need anything, call me. But I don't really want to go to your house for dinner. I don't want you to come over to my house. And my mom is extrovert. Everyone come into the house type of thing. So watching my dad, I learned, and And where I see it in myself now as a father is that definitely like there's always something to do.
Yeah.
There's like you can do laundry. There's always something that needing to be done. But now it's like I want to break that cycle though at the same time. So there's this like shift of like that's what's downloaded in me. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
But then there's like the child in me saying, but Naya wants you to watch a movie with her. Mm-hmm. So like I want to give her that. Yeah. And I'll just do laundry at night or I'll sweep the floors at night.
Yeah.
Even though
and I don't think you had to balance that with me because our time was
absolutely.
Always just like playtime.
Yeah. It was just, I had no other, I had responsibilities, but not like now, like I'm not married. I could just come to Seattle when I wanted to. So that's like a earlier part. And then as you grow up, so when my parents divorced, I actively sought out families of color that had like that bond that I needed to still be able to focus on. So like the Baines for me, I would spend probably a lot of time at their house, even when their kids weren't there. So kind of like I would go over to hang out with their kids.
You're like, can I be your practice son?
Yeah, exactly. But for me, it wasn't practice son. It's just like, in this chaos, I need normalcy type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't want it to be a white family. And I don't want it to be a Hispanic family. And I don't want it to be an Asian. Like I need like people of color. Mm-hmm. And same thing, they opened the door to me. They opened their refrigerator to me. Whenever there was a party, they would invite me. And I don't even think they knew this was all going on.
Yeah,
but
you were essentially like creating that village for yourself.
Correct. So, and because my dad wouldn't create that, I mean, he's just not that type of person. Mm-hmm. So, like some of my greatest moments ever were in that house. And I think like when they sold that house, I was just devastated because I'm like, the memories that I had in that house was just like, how could you sell this house? Like I was going to bring my kids to this house, and so for me, like when I'm looking, as I'm parenting my children, I bring some of him into. So as you manage through life, as a male, when you have kids, I think you kind of go back and look at like who influenced you. And for me, I want to take the positive things but like just like the other day, someone was, I do a lot of conversations with a lot of my friends online. And we were having a conversation the other night, like, with Father's Day, like, what does father mean to you? Like this came up and I was like, you just being there for your kids, I'm always going to just blurt things out when I don't think. I'm just like, this is what it means. This is what it means. But I process like a lot later. And when I laid down, I was, thinking about like, what does it mean to be like a father? And for me, I was like, I think the most important thing for me is to be, and I'm going to laugh because I was all excited and took this back to the discussion and got shot down. But I was like, for me, what does it mean to be a father is to be a better husband is number one. Because for me, I wouldn't be a father without Leonor. Mm-hmm. So for me, like that's an honor that I need to, pay back. But also for your children to see, I think is important. So I was all excited, went back to my group. I was like, I got to figure it out. And then not thinking, not processing. I'm a Sagittarius.
Not explaining either, sounds like.
Yeah, I don't filter. I went back and I was like, to be a better husband. And everyone was like, no, that makes sense. I like that. And then I have one friend who's actually going through a divorce. And I was just like, and when he started to talk, I was just like, oh, you didn't check that one, and when he said it, he agreed. He agreed. And he goes, from like moving forward, instead of saying a better husband, how about we just say a better partner?
Yeah.
Because I still have to, Like,
co-parent.
I still want that challenge, she said. Like, I still want to, because I want to be a positive role model for my children. Like, I want to be all these things, and I still want to honor their mother, which for me was just like, because in the current situation, his wife is just being super evil. So for him to say, like, I still want to honor her was just like, wow. But I know he knows for the rest of his life, he has to have this partnership with her. Yep. So he said, from now on, let's just say, like, being a father is being, number one, a better partner instead of husband. And I was like, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and you were speaking specifically to you.
Right.
So, like, for you, it is the role of being a husband.
Right. But I think even for me, moving forward, and the reason why I did say husband was because I wanted to basically go into the story, but I will say a better partner as well. Because it's not the title. Yeah. The title's there, but it's the action. And I feel with husband, there's still this kind of like, you know, like ownership tied to it type of thing. Yeah. Where
it's my wife.
Yeah. No CEO is like, you know, like no person of a good company is what approaches like we're all kind of equals and we're in this together. Instead of like, I'm the fucking CEO. This is how should we get, you know, when you step to the table as I'm the CEO, how do you guys want to handle this? Everyone kind of like, well, you know, you're the CEO. You handle it. Obviously, you know, so I want to make sure I use that word partner moving forward because to me, it's more empowering. Yeah. And it's basically looking at my wife as an equal in this partnership of marriage, of unity, of raising kids. Then the second part of being a father for me, which I brought up, was just being present. Yeah. And I see so much like, and I will go on record because we're recording and videoing, so I don't know which one I'm supposed to be responding to, but I'll go on record. Yeah. I'll go on record saying like, this was probably about a year and a half ago. I was playing with Naya and on my phone. And we were playing, we were having fun, and she was talking to me, and I like zoned out for a second into like whatever it was on the phone, which was not important. And she's like, are you playing with me or looking at your phone? And I like stopped and looked at her. I was like, thank you, Naya. I was like, from here on out, if you feel like I don't, and she will, I'm like, if you feel like you don't have my attention if I'm not even playing with you, if you feel like I've been on my phone too much, let me know. Yeah. Like, let me know. Yeah. And she does. And she
definitely does. The other day when it was Kale's birthday, I was in like the dirt playing with her and he started pushing his lawnmower and I like went to take a little video of it. And so I was taking a video of him and she's like, are you just going to be on your phone? Are you going to play with me? And I was like, Naya, I am playing with you. I just wanted to take a short video of Kale because he's pushing his toy. But yes, you know what? I'm here with you.
Right. And then...
so she'll tell you.
No, definitely. And to me, like, as a parent, like, kids don't care... Even if you're doing a video, like they don't care about the video.
She didn't care.
They just want you to play with them and they want you to be in the moment and they want you to be present. Yeah. And that's just, I mean, just that little lesson has even refocused my attention just to life. Like, you know, when I'm with Leonor, like talking to her and not on my phone and
well, and I think that like stays pretty consistent even as kids grow up. I mean, even being, 26, almost 27 myself, I'm like being able to have like our phone conversations where you are really present in conversation with me means so much because not only did I not really receive much of that growing up, but it is that sense of presence of like, okay, you care about this time and connection with me and like you are here present with me. And like a lot of the conflicts even that I've had with my parents are around this, like, my life is very different now, but I still want you to be present in my life. I feel this lack of presence. Absolutely. I don't need financial support, but like, I would just want you to be present. Yeah. So
I think for a lot of parents, especially in the United States, because as I travel, you see different cultures but in the US, I think financial gifts and I think it's easier to parent financially.
Yeah, well, and sense. I also think that people feel you know, once your child's an adult, that you're like relieved of any sort of responsibility for them.
I mean, yes, I can see that. But I think even, I mean, I guess what I meant to say is from early age to older adults, like, just, you know, when you're with your children and you're creating that, you know, space, it's easier for me to like, it would be easier for me to go to the store, buy a toy, give it to Naya, and Naya would go play for 2 hours and let me do versus playing with your child. Like, it is easier. And when I say parent, as, I mean, financially, you know, now I got it all twisted.
You also, I will say, so far in this episode, you've done great with your words, because you usually are so bad with mixing your words. And I'm like, what are you even talking about?
Right. But to parent financially is what I'm trying to say. To parent financially is so much easier. Like, I mean, I just think
takes less energy.
Yeah. Well, even as older kids, like, I don't want to deal with my kids, so I'm going to send them off for school. And I tell myself it is for them to get a better education, and I have more time. And I've tried to focus on, you know, the opposite of that. And I do fall into like just getting toys and, you know, books and stuff that will just hold Naya's attention for 15 minutes because she more wants you. You know, she's just that type of kid.
Yeah.
But I think that it is emotionally, we're coming to this place where it's harder to connect. Emotionally connecting with people is so much more draining.
Well, it depends on who the people are.
No, absolutely. But I feel like it's probably at that point because you're not giving it or you're not receiving it.
Yeah. So
there's one thing about like growing up that when I went to people's homes, I had their attentions. So in my village, I want to create a safe space. So when you come to my house, if you're coming to my house at night and you're saying something's happened, you're coming to my house. I'm not going to look at my cell phone. Like, I'm going to engage. We're going to talk it out. A lot of times I got to get up at like 6 a.m. that next morning.
Yeah.
But we're going to have if the discussion has to go to 5:30, you're important enough to me. I can make that sleep up when I'm dead.
Yeah.
But if you have an issue, absolutely. Like, and that's what I want to create for my children too within my village. Like, if my children can't come to me, if I piss my child off, if I make Naya upset, I want to know that she has a safe place to go.
She'll be like, where's Tay-Tay?
To have these conversations. And which is great is like, you know, we talk a lot about action versus impact, and, you know,
intention versus impact. There we
go
with the words.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
Intention versus impact.
Yeah.
Like, I could do some of the, like, something that I think is great, but Naya can take it another way.
Yeah.
Do I want Naya to go talk to her friends who might not have her best intentions? Or do I want her to go to you, who can be like, yes, your father is like that. Yes, your dad is crazy. And give her the tools that she needs to come back home and feel safe. So for me, that, if you don't create a good men, not women, I want, and I do want to stress that, because I think a lot of families feel like women need to create their villages. I think as a male, you also need to create your village as well, and bring those villages together, because, you know, like it's only going to be beneficial like down the road.
Do you feel like you have extra pressure or any pressure at being a father that you are Black and have other stereotypes that you feel like you have to like fight against, or does that just feel like not very present for you?
Absolutely. But like in my home, that is my safe place. That is my nest. That is where I can relax. That's where I can peel back layers. That's sacred to me. So, you know, when I hear of like, you know, a Black male getting shot in their home, like that to me is just, that's even crazy. Like, that's beyond crazy to me, because it's like my safe, you know, like this is just my safe place. Parenting not parenting, being a father, especially a father of color, like a lot of people are like, you know, how are you processing right now with all this stuff? And I'm like, this is something new for you.
Yeah.
This is something like, this is always, like, I could have the best morning. Like, I can make up and Naya can make me the worst scrambled eggs ever, but I'll eat them and then we'll have fun and we'll have a great morning. And as soon as I open the door, the world attacks. And this is what I've been trying to explain to some of my friends, like I'll walk out the door and, I'll say hi to my neighbors. My neighbors, we made it a point to live in a neighborhood that is like super diverse. It's changing, but it's still predominantly
gentrification is happening.
Yeah, but it's still diverse. And my neighbors are mad cool, and I can go out and say hi. Then I get to work, and then it's just, I call them little setups where you'll be walking and you'll see a lady just grab her purse as she sees you. And, and I remember young thinking like, oh, this is more me than them. Like maybe she just grabbed her purse the wrong way. Like just maybe I'm reading more into it. And, but then as you grow up as a black male, you realize like no, more and more people are doing this. And,
it's a microaggression.
Yeah. So you going out in the world and basically like, you can either sit back and pay attention to it, but you can't ignore it. But anyway, you're still absorbing it. And so by the time, I get back home to my safe place, like, you feel kind of beat up but Naya doesn't care what happened out in the world, and to me, that's the beauty. Like, she doesn't care if I'm tired. She doesn't care how many, the pressure, because and I'll go a little bit into it, but she doesn't care about that. Like, she's ready to play. And I have to wash that off.
You feel like that Kevin Hart clip sometimes where like you're pulling up to the driveway in the house and you see the kid looking out the window like, Daddy, I'm ready to play.
No,
and
absolutely.
you're just like, I'm going to back out of this driveway.
No, I don't want to back out because I really, like, it really softens me as a male, especially, and I don't know if it's because my oldest child is a girl, and I have a son as well who's younger, but I still want that effect.
Yeah,
like it softens you because when you step outside the home as a black, the pressures are like if it doesn't like eat you up, like you at some point you're gonna break. So you can break positively or you can break negative. I remember one time, like, it was just a horrible day. And I think, like, me and Leonora, like, this was when we were just trying to figure out what parenting was. And, like, just, like, I got home from work and it was a shitty week at work. Like, just, had a passenger, I'm a flight attendant, I had a passenger in first class texting someone, and I'll actually, being nosy, looked down at his text. Yeah,
you are real nosy.
Yeah, looked down at his text, and he was like, this is great, I'm being served by a nigger. So it was kind of like, do I say, you want to react. And it's naturally for me.
You've never told me that.
No, I didn't. Like, it was, if you were on Facebook, you would have saw it, because there was like this whole,
Facebook.
Exactly. But there was this like whole discussion after that. And like, I was mad at myself because I didn't say anything, but then I understood, like, then it's like, well, like all these different things, like my mom pops in my head, well, that's what you get for being nosy, like all these different, and then I'm like, it's not okay. And then I just went to like a person from my company. I was like, I know our policy is like, we don't, tolerate discrimination between employees. But if I was to fly off the hinges at this guy, does that same support, are you going to back me up or this employee? Even though I looked at his text.
You mean customer.
I mean customer, yes, thank you. Who are you going to back up? And it was like they didn't really have an answer, which made me, it was just made me sink into myself even more.
Yeah.
Because they're like, yeah, if another employee calls you a nigger, like, they're gone. We're not going to tolerate it. But if this first class passenger who was an elite member and you were to like go off the hinges, they literally looked at me and was like, I don't know how we would handle that. And I'm looking at them like, what's the difference? Yeah, what's the difference between him and that employee? Like, if we don't, and then it just like, so we don't value what we say we value. And then, like, I think, like, me and Leonor had gotten into maybe an argument. I don't really argue, but I would want to just say discussions. And so I was, like, really bummed coming. Like, I was just like, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go work. I don't know where I want to be. And opened the door, and I was just like, Papa, I'm so happy you're home. And I think I just started, like, having eye sweats right there at the door, like my eyes sweat. I don't cry, my eyes sweat.
Oh, come on.
And no, I do cry.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and then everything just kind of went away. And I was like, thank you, Naya. And she's like, thank you for what? She's like, what am I thanking you for? And I was just like, oh, Daddy had a horrible day. And she's like, did you bring me a surprise? And I was like, I don't... No. And she's like, oh. And then I just laughed. I sat there and laughed because I was like, oh, like she was like happy to see me and the surprise that she like created in her head. And I was like, that's so my child. And
she's a Cancer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, there's so many pressures. And, as I talk to my white male friends, especially like now, with them reaching out right now, like, like the challenges they have coming home. And I'm like, just them. And I like, I can identify with them, but I'm just like, still like, just add this other layer to it. Like,
yeah.
And like, like just driving home, like, like you have all these like little triggers that are just like, like a cop passes you and you're like, oh shit. Like, like these just little things. And it's like you got to deal with all this until you get home. And then once you get home, it's just like, then you don't want to leave, type of thing. But yeah, no, there's definitely, I try not to focus on it too much when it's not happening. Like I deal with it and I try to get rid of it. But yeah, like, I was thinking the other night, like, as far as like this village and like your dad not being in your life. And I was thinking the other night, like, would he be happy that I stepped up? Would he be angry that I stepped up? And it first started kind of through like thinking about Jason and like, like me being very sensitive to his role and not wanting to. Yeah. And then I was just kind of like, like, man, I wonder how like your dad would, I don't know if you say father or dad, because I always get them like people like he was a dad. He's my dad. He's not my father. Or I hear like he's my father, not my dad. Or he's my sperm.
Yeah, when I was younger, I'd say he's my sperm donor. Yeah. Now I just say he's my biological dad. Right.
But I I was sitting there thinking like, would he be upset? And then as I like really started to like dive deep into the conversation, I was like, I don't think he would be upset. And I think, like, as far as the village, like, I feel as black men, this is where we need to step up. Like, if we see, like a father is struggling.
Yeah.
If we see that a father is not able, because we can only step up with what we have.
Yeah. And
when you don't have enough. And then I started to think also, like how has, like, I know how society has, like, basically, like, fucks me up daily. But it's like, has society, like, fucked him up so much?
Oh, yeah.
That he couldn't, so I
don't think there's any, like, real significant area of being a father that he would actually feel capable of being able to step up to.
Yeah.
I mean, lack of education, lack of financial resources.
Yeah, but
history of being in jail for not being able to pay child support, for selling drugs, to try to...
No, absolutely. But I want to say, like, we have, and we were talking earlier about the CDC study that actually said that black males are actually more active in their children's lives than any other race. So, but there are plenty of dads that don't have education. There are plenty of dads that had criminal records. That still step up. But it's like...
And I will say I do see, I mean, from some other siblings where he does attempt to, but again, I think he struggles because I don't think he really knows how. And I think he sees where he has failed, completely failed absolutely. As a father. And it's... I mean, I feel for him, but I'm also like, I don't have any desire to have that in my life. And we've even talked about that of like, daddy issues and like, okay, well, if I do have daddy issues, then what even are those? And like processing that. And I think it sucks because a lot of the times that statement even falls on the daughters where like, where is the conversation about why these fathers aren't able to be like, to actually show up as great fathers in the first place.
Right. And I don't think it is your responsibility to reach out. And if there's and I'm not angry at your dad, but if there's anything I would choose to be angry about, it would be him not reaching out. Because I feel as a parent.
So I will say this though.
Okay.
When mom moved me from Bridgeton, New Jersey to Seattle, again, this was back in the day. This was like late 90s. His mom, and this is again, he had just finished high school. Like this is me like giving him breaks, right? He had just finished high school. He didn't really know what he was doing. He like kind of had another kid. Was trying to go to community college. For like his mom, and he has a few sisters as well. And like they were the ones reaching out, trying to like gain contact with me. And then in middle school, MySpace came up, and they're like, "Do you want to meet your dad? Don't you want to meet your dad?" And I was like, "I don't really know who this dude is. Like he's a stranger to me. Like not really.
Don't you want to meet this stranger? Don't you want to meet?"
The stranger that like I was like, what? And then in high school was Facebook, where he then would reach out via Facebook, and it was very like, "I'm your father," blah blah. "You were taken away from me. Like I'm your father." And where I was like, okay, but you're also like, you're kind of a stranger. Like you're not, and I get that you see yourself as my father, but I, for the most part, have really never met you. Like I was a baby and you weren't really present then. And, he was defensive and, you got to respect your elders. You don't talk smack to me like that. And I was like,
No. And I think you owe it to yourself to find out why he didn't step up.
Well, I know why.
But
I don't need to hear.
So he told you himself?
What no. Literally... he had no clue where I went. They tried to find lawyers. They literally could not figure out where I went. His sisters told me that.
So your mom kidnapped you?
In their eyes, yeah. To their family, to his mom. To his mom, yeah. Okay. I was the one that got away. And I'm like, well, he gave y'all 10 others. But no, that's beside the point.
Right.
But I do think... like, I don't feel a need to have an explanation from him as to why he didn't show up for me, because I honestly, knowing his life and knowing the tools that he did have, I would feel like it'd be harsh to even have that expectation of him to be capable of that. And that's not even meant as like an insult, but that's the fucking reality of it. And then also knowing that he has had many other children where he still has not stepped up, all for those same reasons, and where anytime I do talk to one of my siblings, they are equally, if not even more, hurt and in pain and feeling like he's not there for them and feeling like they get their hopes up and then he's not there. And it's like, well, do you understand why? And I think they are the ones that maybe seek that information and conversation from him more, especially, my one brother, because that's like his father-son relationship. But for me, I don't feel like I need this like explanation from him of why. I'm like, I get why. I'm like, I don't know what else you were supposed to do. Yeah. Shit was kind of stacked against you. And I don't feel like you didn't try or that I needed you to try more, because really, what were you supposed to do? And I said this to him when I met him. I said, well, so have you heard of condoms?
Yeah, but I mean, I think and I mean, I agree, and I think that is a great question. But how, for me, I mean, my heart goes out to him, not in a sympathetic way, but it's like,
I don't think he would be mad at you.
No, I don't. And as I thought of it, but what I like as a black male, then I start thinking of like my pathologies and like, did he have that model to him? Did he have the good father model to him? Did he have like people like a male showing up to him? So there's all these like layers that. Well,
from what I know, he in some ways repeated a little bit of a cycle, because I think from what I've known, his mom and dad were still together, but that his dad was like a ladies' man. And
so this is who
and he's the only son of I think it's three sisters.
Every child, so we, through your studies, like every child every boy wants to be like their dad. And then so there's that piece to it. And then there's the pathology piece, like the piece we don't even realize is getting downloaded, that what was taught to him was, in order to be a male, these are the things you have to do. And so that's why, like, I say, like I feel bad for him, because I think in his mind he was doing what is his normal.
Well, he certainly made it his normal after the fourth, after the fifth, after like...
Right. But if this is what's modeled to you, like, does he have other siblings? So if it is your normal, and I think part of your daddy issues is part of that, like, because you might not feel it, but there's a little bit of anger in there.
Because it feels like, how'd you not know? How'd you not pull out? Plan B.
Because of education.
And I know that. And that is part of what also, like, infuriates me about our system and about the fact that he didn't have those resources.
I'm aware. Like, I'm super aware. Like, I'm a proud, like, condom user. Not now that I'm married, but like, learning, like, when we had kids, like, learning, like, there's actually really a small window to get a woman pregnant, and like we. Just in the U.S. education system, we're taught so little about, like, reproduction and sex. Okay. And then, like, when you add on to that, like,
being black in America.
And I think the other things.
It does make me sad, because I think he does fulfill more of that role of what people think of as a stereotypical black absent father who's in and out of jail and who sells drugs. And it's like, I know, well, that's partly why I'm glad you did stay in my life, because it is like a model of something that's not that. But
at the same time, like, I would just ask, like, knowing who I am, like, I could leave here today and go to jail.
Yeah.
And then I would fit everybody else's stereotype. But you have a relationship. So that's the important piece that I think is missing between you and your dad, is you don't have the relationship where you know all the other things that make it not what had like for me, at the basic, he should, like, I'm just thinking, like, if you were Naya, or if I was your dad, I would do everything. I would spend every day trying to reach out to my kids every day. But I have more of a worldly, I have a lot more, I could have more than what he brings to the table. So he's...
I don't think he thinks like that.
Right. But I'm saying there's reasons why.
Well,
and part of it could be, like, like he's been reaching out to his dad, or was reaching out to his dad.
I mean, for a while, he still lived with his parents for a while, I think.
Okay. So that's not
his dad is present in his life.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe he thinks the kids, if they want to, and this is the thing, like, we sit at home and, like, well, if she wants to be in my life, she would reach out. And it's like, no, you're the dad.
Well,
like,
I think there's layers to it, how I've processed it, because he was graduating high school when I was born. My mom, in his perspective, took me away from him. So he was robbed of a chance to be a father to me. And in a way, I get that. Maybe that did set the stage for him with his future kids to feel like, okay, well, I don't really need to be here. Like, they're going to be fine. Their mom's got this. But at the same time,
or maybe, do I want to even try to connect? Because what if the mom just
take them away? Yeah. But on the other hand, in my head, I'm like, well, he hasn't really shown any different with his other children. So how would it have been any different if my mom hadn't taken me away? Because he also wasn't really present when I was there.
Right. But then I think the better question is, how did that affect you where he wouldn't want to reach out? And that's why I'm saying, like, at some point, you can either make the choice to like have him answer, and it sounds like you're not like you don't need that.
I don't think I ever really did, because Mom and I were so close, and it was like she was both to me. And again, I think the way that I was raised, you know, my mom having me really young and being a single mom for a lot of it, even when she did marry my stepdad, Jason, he was in the Air Force, so he was still gone a lot, and it was mainly me and her. But that, you know, growing up, there were never really times where I was like, well, what about my real dad? Where's my real dad? Like,
no, absolutely.
I didn't particularly have that strong desire of like, you know, well, I want to be like with my dad. And I think partially because I didn't really see that modeled.
Yeah,
I didn't see that modeled to be like, oh, I want that.
Why would you want to be with a stranger? Yeah. No. And
also he was black, and I was not around anyone else that was black.
Right.
So then that, to me, even then as a kid, is like, that's different. And then when I'm in South Carolina and I experience all this racism and it's like this terrible negative thing to be black, then it's like, oh, well, then if the part of me that's ugly and terrible is black, and
why would I want to associate that?
Yeah.
Because you have, I mean, outside of your dad, you have probably a beautiful grandmother, a beautiful grandfather who are flawed.
Aunts
and
too.
And uncles and part of who you are in your being, part of who you are. And
I don't know,
like, how I can, and I have no problem, and I'm honored to step up, and I feel as a man of color, that is part of my role is to step up. But I think like in the end, it's going to be your decision, and I will support any decision that you make. But I think at the same time, like, they're outside of him, there are these other people that could be suffering. And maybe they've heard that you don't want nothing to do with him, so you probably don't want anything to do with them. And so there's so many layers.
There's a lot of layers, yeah.
And it gets so complicated. But yeah, just we kind of got a little off subject here, but
daddy issues.
Yeah, but
Father's Day.
Yeah, and you still have, you know, like I had daddy issues, and I was raised with my father. You know what I mean? So it's just.
But there
normal.
is like there's a very specific thing of like people, like guys using daddy issues like against girls that they date, and I've never had anyone like bring that up to me, but I do try to reflect on that, knowing that my biological dad was not present in my life. Of like, how has that really impacted me on a deeper layer? And I really don't know, and it's probably something I'll continue to process. But I know that like having you in my life as what I consider like a chosen family, chosen father figure, that like that has felt like healing in ways that probably like in deeper layers I don't even really know. But that it does feel like, you know, with Naya and Calais, even of being able to see myself in these other people that do feel like family, that there is such this like, kind of how you said, like with dating or, you know, with being married to Leonore, that like with everything happening in the world and, you know, dealing with racism, that it's like so healing to come home and not have to explain your experience and not having to explain the impact. And where for me, I've always had to explain that. I've always had to be like, okay, well, it's because of this and this. And like, oh, well, you don't see that. Okay, so let me explain this. And that it's like a different layer of healing in a familial way of being seen and of feeling validated and of feeling valued and worthy and understood, that like makes such a difference and has really only been, you know, in the last 5 years of my life. Yeah,
because, and this is another thing that all parents that have biracial children that aren't with the other side, be it white, well, I feel like white, you will absorb it just because through society, at some point your child is going to step into that other side. And I think that it's like beyond, like basically their survival will be like, if they have no one to go through, they're going to go through life like disliking, I don't want to use hate, but disliking that part.
Yeah, disliking themselves. And that's totally what I experienced.
Yeah. And it's like you have to have someone, and I think like even if you didn't met me, I want to think that hopefully somebody else would have stepped up, or like a friend's parent or something would have stepped in. But yeah, my heart goes out to your dad, because who you turned out to be. Like, and this is one thing I would say from our relationship that I take into my relationship with Naya, is that I limited, and this will, like, forgive me for this, but who I saw you being was so limited.
What do you mean?
What do I mean by that? So,
yeah, please explain.
So, like, when I used to think, like, what is Taylor going to be? Like, what is she going to be in life? What is she going to do? Like, what is, like, all these things. I'm like, like, you have excelled that beyond where, like, I knew you would go to school and you would have, like, an office job. Like, like, I saw. But what you, so, like, my vision, which was still a good vision, like, like, I knew you would be productive, and, like, you have exceeded that beyond, like, I mean, I can't, like, life forms that now when I look at Naya, I have no vision of her, because I don't want that to compress, like, I don't want to push her into, that one thing I've absorbed from, having a practice daughter, if folks want to go out there and find a practice son. But before you have children, like, just connecting, like, is to kind of, I think my role now is just kind of allowing Naya to be my teacher.
Yeah, I think that's a difficult thing sometimes for parents to switch a flip on, because it feels like, oh, I'm the teacher, I'm the adults.
But I mean, even in taking that approach, like, I've healed so much of my little inner child.
Yeah, I think that is part of what maybe also feels intimidating or uncomfortable for my father.
Yeah,
because I'm. Yeah.
Say it.
Because because I am in a much different place than him, and probably a place that he would have never been able to see for himself or be able to see for me, and probably hasn't been able to see yet or can see for any of his other children.
Right. And then sit in that, though. Like, because...
Yeah. Well, I also know that part of that is in a place of privilege, because I'm also the only person that has a white mom.
Correct,
so I do have different,
but there's a lot of mixed,
and a white stepdad who was in military. Who
there's a lot of mixed kids out there that still don't achieve the things that you have. So a lot of things have fueled you as well to continue on. So. And
honestly, part of it is that pettiness of, like, okay, no one in my family has, like, gone to school, so, like, people might not think that, that I would go and get a graduate degree, or that I could, do something like go to Hopkins. Like, so, like the pettiness in me is like, I will. But
as you shift, though, as you continue this journey through life, and I think this happened with the whole Amy, whatever her name is, in New York, is Cooper. That, until you form a relationship with people, you're still a black woman.
Yes.
So all that you bring to the table, it doesn't matter to a lot of people.
Yeah, because Christian was Harvard grad and all this. It doesn't matter. I get that.
But it matters to me and I think it would matter to your dad, and I think it matters to it matters to Naya, because... hopefully it's not pettiness that was the drive, because I don't want Naya to think, all right, being petty is good, and this is what's going to get me, through school and everything. But there's a drive, and what you have accomplished is rare for women of color. So as you sit in that comes a lot of... And definitely, like, you've had privileges, and this is why I tell white people, like, that sulk with white privilege. Like, you use your superpower. White privilege is a superpower to me. And if I could go to Costco and buy, like, like white privilege, I would definitely buy some white privilege. So you take that white privilege, your superpower, and use it to uplift other people.
Yeah.
So at some point, like you have to, because many people helped you, pulled you up, saw something in you, and it was maybe an external village. Because, like, for me, I wasn't in the village. I looked out, and then I wanted to bring you into my village, because I knew at some point you were going to need a person of color. I knew that when you were 5, 6, and 7. I knew you were going, because there was a day that I would say probably within the last 5 years when you come into your color, that.
Well, like, I feel like I come into, like, both, where it's like, okay, I'm not just, expressing my whiteness and suppressing my blackness, but that I'm showing up in both.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. You can, but how I look at it, as you are showing up as a woman of color. Mm-hmm. And I only say that because that's how society, now how you view yourself, how your followers might view you, how the Bachelor might view you is like being interracial. Mm-hmm. But interracial is a label they created.
Biracial?
Or biracial or mulatto. Mm-hmm. This is a label they created to only put you above people that weren't mixed. So you got to go into the end because you were mixed and you carried the label of interracial mixed mulatto. Back in the day, you would have been able to work in the house.
Yeah.
So for me to chip away at, like, I'm black. I know I have white. I know that. It's not a secret. Mm-hmm. 24andMe brought it all out.
23andMe.
Whatever. Well, 24 because we had a secret. But revealed all that to me, which I knew, but there's a point, like, it didn't matter. Like, society, even though I can go out and say, like, look, my DNA says this, that's not going to help me with the cop. Yeah. So
that's the one drop rule. And that is how society still sees me.
I look at you as a person of color to uplift that. So,
yeah, and I don't think I ever identified myself as that until the last 5 years. And I think a big part of that was being able to have those experiences with you and with Naya and Calais.
All right. Right. Well, that makes me feel good because I don't ever want you to look at yourself negatively. And that's if you're black and white, blue and like, well, I don't want to say blue because that's not the color, but of a person. But like if you're Asian and white, like you should be able to, hopefully we'll get to a place where society, it won't matter.
Hopefully.
But
or it can be celebrated and not be something that you're shamed for and supposed to feel bad about.
Right.
But
and that's why I celebrate you going to Johns Hopkins as a woman of color, not as a biracial woman. Mm-hmm. Because because in that statement, a little black girl is going to hear, it's going to be harder for me because I'm not
Because I'm not mixed, because I don't have that whiteness in me. Yeah, there's so many layers to all of it, but I'm definitely very, very thankful that you did stay in my life. And, when I think about celebrating fathers or expressing, love towards fathers, that you're definitely like the first person that comes to my mind, not only partially because I see how you are literally stepping into fatherhood and have stepped into fatherhood with Naya and Calais, but also recognizing where there have been really, really significant aspects of my growth and of my becoming of a woman that I would not have had this support with if you weren't in my life. And so I'm super happy that you were open to coming on this episode and celebrate Father's Day in a way. And, you do always show up for me. And I know that there's like not one thing that I could ask you that you'd be like, no, or, go do that yourself, or like certainly you might encourage me to, but that like I know that
tonight.
Yes, like I need to do laundry, but that you will always be there for me, and that I don't have to question that or question if you care about me or if you care about the people in my life, or if I'm going to do some stupid shit, if you're going to like call me out and be like, Taylor, that's some stupid shit. Like just knowing that I do have that support make such a difference, even as being an adult, of being 26, almost 27. Like, it means a lot. So thank you.
No, absolutely. And like, I want to say, like, thank your dad, your birth dad, and I thank your mom.
Thanks for having sex, y'all.
Yeah, for coming together. I thank your mom for allowing me to still be. Mm-hmm. Because as she got married and formed a family, she could have easily drifted apart. And I think Jason for even, you know, because as you form a family, allowing a man of color, you know, to stay active in your life, in your daughter's life, because I mean, I'm sure there's white people that want to raise their daughter to be white. And so I thank them for that. And I thank you for proving me wrong, showing me how to be a better father, showing me how to step up more in the role of a father, and basically learning to be a student in my role of being a father when it comes to my children, and learning, you know, from them instead of them learning from me. Definitely. And also thankful for my children being able to basically have, you know, there'll be a day, if all goes well, there'll be a day where I won't be here any longer and my children will be old. And it gives me comfort knowing that my kids have somebody I know will steer them always in the right direction. Even when they disappoint, like even when they disappoint you, that you will still, you know, love them and be supportive. Yeah, definitely.
Of course. Now, I usually end this episode with like, you know, or episodes with, you know, where can people find you if they want to follow your work?
I think I have. You can find me on Instagram.
Which I don't even know if you want to do.
Hold on. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can be part of I think I have 20-something followers now. If I can figure out how to add you. But no, the last episode, I did have a couple people did reach out.
Oh, really?
For me. Yeah, like 2 or 3 people wanting to know the correct name of the book, because I think I said the wrong name of the book. And just people just, you know, saying like, thank you or whatever. But yeah, like my Instagram page is not very, like nothing's going on.
It's a few photos of the
now,
kids,
if you're on Facebook, now you can find, my Facebook is like on point.
Okay.
And it's super controversial. Always. It's a lot of talk about race on my Facebook page. A lot of talk about, it's very hard as a white person, I think, to
be friends with you on Facebook?
Not to be friends with me, but to sit on a lot of posts. But I think if you're in the position of wanting to better yourself,
if you open,
like you, I think I post a lot of stuff to help people get to the next stage if you're on that road of being a true ally. Not where you call yourself an ally.
Yeah.
But just getting to that point.
So how would someone find you on Facebook?
I don't know. I guess you just put my name in. I don't know. People find me. I don't know.
I'll put the link to your Facebook page in the episode
That's how they find me.
Again, thank you, Rob, for coming on.
Thank you. It was great.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for making it all the way through and keeping your ears, your hearts, and your minds open. It would mean so much to me if you could take a second or two after listening to this episode to leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're enjoying about the show. I love reading, you know, what your favorite episodes are, where you guys listen, and definitely feel free to share this with a friend. I mean, part of how we break down the stigmas around these topics is by talking about them, right? And sharing them with more people. So definitely share the podcast. And again, really wanting to include all of you in this podcast. So if you have questions or you want to share a thought or an experience, please send in a voice memo to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and breaking down these stigmas. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.